This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don, and as you will know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will appear here in my chat room, and we can communicate directly. And today is the beginning of a new week here in Danville. We have had a very cold and wintry weekend, um, followed by pleasant weather again today. And I'm hoping for uh, a less wintry week, but the weekend wasn't too bad. My subject for today is spellwork. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about the idea of spellwork, because it's one of the things that when people come to various kinds of paganism and witchcraft is usually one of the first things they're familiar with and want to know about. And this isn't certainly going to be an in-depth examination, but we'll talk about some relevant things. And what is spellwork? What does it mean? And the definition that I will give you is that spellwork is a magical attempt to manifest your desire into the physical world using, as a rule, various physical items. And the result is a combination of the energy of the spell worker augmented by and in sympathy with the energy of the items used. There doesn't necessarily have to be anything in the way of items, but there commonly is. And hello to Janet in the chat room. It's good to see you, Janet. And usually when people think of spell work, they're thinking of things that involve external items. I've heard spell work described as prayer with props. And to some extent, that does describe it. Now, people do have different ideas of why spell work works. Some people will tell you it's purely the energy of the items that you're using, that they work on their own and that you don't have to do anything. I do not agree with that point of view, but there are different points of view, and that is one. My answer to that is that anyone who's tried to do that and found it didn't work will know there must be a little bit more involved. And I would say ultimately it really is the energy of the person interacting with the energy of the universe that makes a spell work or not work. But the items that you're using can help. This is part of that idea of attuning to the energies of the universe. So, for example, if you are doing a candle magic spell, candle magic is very popular. Chances are you would choose a candle in the color that corresponds to what you're trying to do. Let us say that you were doing a spell for prosperity. Green would be a common color to choose for a spell for prosperity. And the idea is that that color of green, because it's associated with growth and life and prosperity and abundance, would help your own energy to go in that direction. It would augment it. It would help to empower it. Now, if you couldn't find a green candle, you needed to use a white one because it's all you had, well, there's no reason that wouldn't work. It isn't the green candle that does the magic, it's the energy. But the use of items that are aligned in purpose can be beneficial. Another thing people often do is they will use stones in their magic. I have here a gold stone, and I don't know if you can exactly see it well. A gold stone is a beautiful synthetic stone. It's been in use for centuries. It was originally called aventurine. Later, the name was changed to goldstone when the term aventurine came to be applied to a different stone. And it is a kind of glass involving, among other things, ground up stone and metal. But even though it's a synthetic stone, it's very effective, again, in prosperity spells and prosperity magic. It's very good for drawing money. My mother used to use goldstone extensively. And hello to Brenda in the chat room. And I highly recommend it for prosperity magic. And it's another example of something that you can do. And an example of what might be considered a spell, and some people have tighter rules for how they would use that term than others, but carrying this stone in your pocket or wearing it in a piece of jewelry to draw prosperity could be considered an example of a spell. A very simple spell using the energy of the stone together with your own intent to pull that prosperity toward you. And hello to Michelle in the chat room. It's good to see you, Michelle. Now, tomorrow, Brenda is going to be our guest on Midday with Rev Don. We'll be talking about the upcoming illustration of the ancestors, which also is going to be a double investiture for the new Corellian first priest and priestess. But we'll be talking about that tomorrow and the kind of thing that you can expect to experience there if you come, or to see covered in the media if you're unable to come. And it's going to be quite an event. Every stone has its metaphysical properties, including some that you might not think of. Let me see what else I have handy. Of course, now that I want it, it's not going to. Well, this is a labradorite. Labradorite is related to psychic abilities, for example, among other things. There are diamonds, which are related to stability and holding things in place. Diamonds are very good for anything you want to last for a long time. Whether they're synthetic or real, I think they would still be effective. I'm a great believer in the idea, and hello to Tracy in the chat room. It's good to see you, Tracy, that synthetic stones can be as useful as natural stones if you know how to use them. We have garnet, which is good for vitality and health, particularly related to blood matters, and for personal power. Turquoise, which is good for communication and persuasiveness, among other things. A wide range of different things you can do with stones. Stones are a common thing to involve in spellwork. Because of these different qualities, you choose the stone that goes with it. Similarly, you can choose the color that goes with your intention, as I was talking about candle magic. And these are some of the things that we do in spellwork, and part of why it works. The idea that we're using these external things to help focus our internal energy as we send it out into the universe. There are endless books of spells that you can look to for inspiration. But every one of those was created by someone at some point, and none of them, in my opinion, is any better than anything you're going to create on the spot. And hello to Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And Mary comes to us, among other things, from Divination TV, which is the network that focuses on divination. And just last Thursday, I made an appearance on Tarot Thursday on Divination TV. These are some of the things that we do. And herbs are often used in spellwork. Written forms can be used in spellwork. Image magic is very important in spellwork, and image magic is one of the oldest aspects of spellwork. When we look at the famous cave paintings from prehistory, it's generally assumed that a large number of those were image magic, that they were created for a magical purpose. And it's assumed that many of them were to have successful hunts because the people who created them were hunter-gatherers. Hunting was very important to them. And the most common subject appears to be the animals that they might have been hunting. And it's reasonable to assume, based on our current practices, that that was probably magical in character. But the idea is that when you create an image of something, you can affect that something. Similarly, using a photograph of that thing can help you to tie into its energy. This is one reason why people from certain cultures really did not like to be photographed. They believed it created a magical connection to their energy, which I would incline to say is true, but also something that is something that you can block if you wish to. And particularly in the way that we use images today, no one image is any more effective than another, that almost all of us have hundreds of images of ourselves captured in different places. Does this contain a little bit of our energy? Possibly. Um, but everything we do carries a little bit of our energy. But using image magic is very popular. A lot of people will talk about what are sometimes called dolls or poppets. The term poppet has become popular in recent years. I find it, I'm not particularly fond of the term, but it's become very popular um, as a replacement for a puppet or a doll, which was the more traditional term. In this country, the United States, puppet is more of a British term, and all it means is a doll or puppet. But the idea that you would make an image of a person if you wanted to do certain sorts of magic in their direction, sometimes baneful magic, but just as possibly positive magic such as healing. If you wanted to make a healing image for a person, you would want to focus on the part of their body that was having a problem. We talk about this in lesson 3 of the first degree lessons, where I point out that you can take your image and you can place a pin in the stomach if the person is having intestinal problems, and focus energy through that pin to that area. And this is all based on the idea of sympathetic magic. And hello to Lisa in the chat room. And Lisa comes to us from San Francisco. And welcome, Lisa. Um, Sympathetic magic is the idea that like affects like. That if you replicate a part of an object, it can be a key to the energy of that object or person or creature. And this is absolutely essential to most practice of magic. And it's connected to that ancient Hermetic idea, as above, so below, that we all share a certain energy, that the created is reflecting the creator in all of its manifestations. And therefore, because we're all connected through our energy, we all can affect one another's energy. And this is a very important idea in magic. Um, when we talk about sympathetic magic, again, we're creating an image of the thing we wish to influence or a symbol of it. Now, sigils are very popular, both traditionally and in modern magic. A sigil is the Latin term for a seal. A seal is just a design that represents someone or something. Many corporations have seals, many individuals have seals, and seals go back to the very dawn of civilization, and the idea that an image can represent a person, an organization, a thing. This is often used in contemporary magic. And just as with a photograph, if you're using a sigil that represents um, say, for example, a particular spirit, a particular act that you wish to create magically, a particular person, that you are accessing their energy through that symbol, that you're using that symbol to create the effect that you're going through. And this is a very traditional form of magic on one hand, and on the other hand, a very modern form of magic. In the 20th century, the idea of sigil magic underwent some changes that greatly broadened its use. I believe it was Austin Spare in particular who um, was involved in that expansion. Sigil magic today is often used to create a sigil that represents the effect of the magic that you're trying to do, that you can focus on the sigil to add strength to the magic you have created, to affect the magic that you're trying to create, which is again, an expansion of traditional sigil magic, where the sigil represented simply something that already existed that you wish to interact with. But this speaks to something that's very dear to my heart, which is the idea that we're not just here to pass on what our ancestors did, but to expand upon it. And I think it's very important for us to constantly look for new and additional ways to do things. Um, I know that there are some people in the magical world who vehemently disagree with that point of view, but I would look to the rest of the world and say, if we didn't look for new ways to do things, we would all still be living in caves and wondering where the mammoths had gone. Um, we need to constantly be evolving what we do if we wish to be constantly effective in what we do. I would have to say, looking back at my own life, I think that I've been a pretty effective person overall. When I look at the things I hoped to accomplish, most of them are pretty well accomplished. And it's not to say there haven't been bumps along the way, but I would have to say that the things that I have focused on, I've done a pretty good job with. And part of the reason for that was I was never unwilling to try new ways of doing things. Many of the things that I've been involved in, I and people I was working with were constantly using the latest technology, the latest techniques, and experiencing success by our willingness to adapt to changing situations. And, as I look at the world today, technology is changing still faster than at any other time in my life, and it's been constantly speeding up. And I think it's very important that both in terms of technology and in terms of every other aspect of knowledge, we must continue to learn and grow and change and develop if we wish to remain effective, if we wish to remain relevant. Um, and relevancy is always something that I think we must ask ourselves, um, are we relevant? Have we lost our relevance? What do we need to do to be relevant? Um, and I think that very often change, growth, development is going to be the answer to that question for a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people in recent years um, thinking of themselves as great elders complain that nobody is listening to them. Nobody wants their opinion. But that's because they've lost their relevance. You look at other great elders who have maintained their relevance and everyone's listening to them. What is the difference? Most often, the difference is whether you have changed as circumstances have changed. Um, there were, oh, do I want to go there? Okay, I will go there. I am a great lover of ancient Egypt and Egyptology and Egyptian theology. And I'm often amazed when I see, and hello to Phoenix Coffin Williams in the chat room, the first priest of the Corellian tradition. And it's good to see you, Phoenix. When we look at Egypt, I'm often amazed by how often I see people relating 100-year-old information from the works of particularly E.A. Wallace Budge, as if it were what current knowledge represented. The point, um, and Lord Phoenix says, good to see you and have some time to pop in. Well, we're glad that you're here. But when we look at Egyptology, we have seen that knowledge constantly expand through the 20th and 21st centuries. I was involved in a conversation, was it just yesterday, regarding the mother of Tutankhamun. And someone confidently asserted that Queen Kia was generally believed to have been his mother. And that was true 20 years ago. But the DNA tests which have been carried out have clearly identified the mummy of his mother and her relationship to his father, and it could not have been Kia. Um, and that has been not especially recent. I would think that anyone who loved Egyptology would know about this. Other people were identifying that same mummy as Nefertiti, which has been completely disproven at this point. Exactly who she is, other than Tutankhamun's mother, is very much up for grabs. The only thing that can absolutely be said of her is that she was a daughter of Amenhotep III. And whether it will ever be possible to actually identify her given that she was found separate from her original burial place, remains to be seen. It may be at some point that an inscription will be found identifying Tutankhamun's mother, but at present, no such inscription exists. But we know from the DNA that she was a full sister of Akhenaten, and that they were both children of Amenhotep III and Queen T. Um, this is current relevant knowledge, but many people are still working on much earlier assumptions. When we come to magic, magic, like everything else, evolves and develops, and we learn better ways of doing things. Um, there are lots of ways in magic where, if we look at the history of magic, we can see certain things that we still do, certain things we usually don't do. A very traditional form of scrying was to have a child, or sometimes a teenager, stare into a bowl of water and see visions within the water, and relate those visions to a second person who interpreted them. You don't see that today. Today, it's the second person who will directly seek their own visions, but this is because they learned better ways to do it. They learned ways to develop that skill more efficiently. Um, and I think that it would be unnecessary to use the older form when there's an easier form that you can do. We've talked about candle magic on a number of occasions. And I have pointed out that candle magic, at least using actual candles, is a very recent thing, because candles were not normally available until really the 19th century, maybe a little bit in the 18th, depending on who you were. Uh, so they obviously were not a regular ingredient in most people's magic. Um, I guess we could say the 18th century, but you look at the 16th century, candles were a thing of the wealthy. Ordinary people, for the most part, did not have ready use of them, certainly not in large numbers, and certainly not in different colors and scents. So a lot of the things we look at in candle magic are very modern developments. Obviously, they're good and useful developments. This is why we must continue to expand our practice. Because as we go forward, we get much better things. Essential oils. Essential oils are very widely used today. Hello to Jade in the chat room. It's good to see you, Jade. I love essential oils. I've even got one laying here on my desk that I use all the time. This one is called Stress Away, and it is made from cedar wood and um, lime and balsam and lavender and a variety of other things. But you would never have had that 200 or 300 years ago unless you were very, very wealthy. There certainly were preparations that people used if they were wealthy. And hello to Mary in the chat room. But the average person leading an average life doing magic did not have expensive compounds of oil that they were able to use. They may have been using oil, but it wouldn't have been that kind of oil. Um, and this is something I think that we often forget. I talk frequently about the tarot and how people think that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is a very traditional tarot, when in fact it's nothing of the sort. It's drastically different from traditional tarot. It is, however, the most popular tarot for the last several generations. But these are two very different things. They are an example of how tarot in the 20th century greatly evolved in how it was used and interpreted and designed. If you look at an older tarot, such as the Marseille Tarot, you'll see it very different in the way that it's constructed. And I think that that development was a very positive, very, very good development. And I'm always in favor of new developments moving forward in new and different ways. And I will always encourage that. And so what I would say to you is, if you're a magical practitioner, or if you're a practitioner of divination, or anything in the metaphysical world, and you find that you have a way that works well for you that maybe no one else that you know has used, work with that, develop it. It may be something that the magical world really needs. Um, I feel that the worst thing we could ever do is to stagnate in our knowledge. Now, we do often use ideas and materials that um, seem antiquated to other parts of the world. I'm not criticizing that. We've talked frequently about astrology and the fact that the astrology commonly used in the Western world does not, in fact, reflect the position of stars and planets in real time, but rather the mathematical position of certain patterns. This is why I believe that astrology works not based on the movement of celestial bodies, but rather on patterns that were at one time marked by the movement of those bodies. Um, but this is an example where maintaining an older system is sensible if you understand why it's working and if it is in fact working for you. But that's not to say that the practice of astrology, despite that anachronism, has not greatly developed over the course of the last 2,000 years. It has. There are lots of things we do in modern astrology we did not do 2,000 years ago. And that, again, is a good and positive step forward, in my opinion. I am a great believer that in all forms of knowledge, growth is always good. You don't necessarily want to forget where you were, but to stay there out of stubbornness when other things are developing, I think is a terrible mistake. And that's how you come to the point that no one is listening to you, because the rest of the world will move forward whether you do or not. So I encourage everyone to constantly add to your knowledge, constantly add to your abilities. One of the best things that ever happened to me at my third degree elevation, my teacher, Lady Crystal, who is still living, and I'm very grateful for that. Nearly 80 now, but still living. She said to me to bear in mind that this was not the completion of my studies, but rather the beginning of my studies, that it merely meant that I had attained a certain requirement of the basics that I would now continue all my life to expand. And that is my message to anyone who cares to listen to me, that you must all your life continue to grow and expand. And as long as you do that, it will reward your efforts. And so those are my thoughts on spellwork and many other aspects of metaphysics. Tomorrow, again, we're going to have the Reverend Brenda Pregande as our guest. We'll be talking about the upcoming lustration here in Danville, Illinois, what lustrations are, what you can expect, and we'll be talking about the double investiture of Lord Phoenix, who is with us in our chat room, and Lady Alyssa as the new first priest and priestess. Um, I myself am now just over 1 year in retirement, in office as first priest of the Corellian tradition. And what that means is that I am still one of the first priesthood, but I'm retired from the daily activities. And I am certainly still there to advise when required, as is Lady Crystal. But the younger generation is coming forward, and I think that is a wonderful thing. And I hope that you will join me um, as this comes to pass in celebration at the lustration. And I hope that if you're physically able to come, you will do so, and that you'll join us online if you cannot physically come, and and wish them well. So with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me, and let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to remain flexible in our mindset and open in our heart. Help us to constantly expand our knowledge and abilities, and to be open always to new and better ways of doing things while holding on to the good and valuable things we already have. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we know you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence, and I will be back tomorrow with my guest, Reverend Brenda Pregante, and until then,